Welcome to Mean Age Daydream with me, Brian McWilliams, where we're going to be making some jokes, laughing out at broken world, but also laying out the philosophy for the future, how we can fix this mess we're in and have a great time doing it all with a Mean Age Daydream. What is up, my chunky monkeys? Yeah, I know you guys put on some Thanksgiving pounds. Welcome to Mean Age Daydream with me, Brian McWilliams. Look at me, not sick anymore, over the sick. Yes, we'll see how long that lasts in this wonderful, endless cycle of drinking, because that's what basically all of the latter part of Thanksgiving on and through December is. I pray to God I'm able to maintain this level of health. But of course, I also did somehow injure my knee getting off a couch. Just getting off a couch now, 2 days. My knee's fucked up. Haven't been able to put my Christmas lights up. Just tragic. Anyway, welcome to Mean Age Daydream, guys. We've got a lot of good stuff to talk about today. Of course, I want to remind you at the top of the show, we are giving you a beautiful Lions of Liberty holiday mug if you subscribe to the podcast at an annual subscription or upgrade your current subscription to an annual subscription. It's a beautiful mug with a lion, with a Santa hat. It says Merry Christmas. It's got a little note that says, don't forget taxation is theft from Santa Claus on it. It's a beautiful mug. Why would you not want it? Anyway, you can go to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty or lionsofliberty.locals.com and sign up there. And I hope you do. But if nothing else, just like the show and share the show and follow me on Twitter and follow us on Twitter. That'd be good. All right. Getting into it, guys. So, top of the pops, let's talk about Kash Patel, because I like that Kash, who is, of course, a bit of a creature of, as I mentioned in the title of this, a creature of creation by the Democrat Party. And it's really fascinating to see a man like Kash who's come up, who's been accused of conspiracy theories, which is ironic considering the fact that he exposed what was clearly a conspiracy theory by the DNC, the Democratic National Party, conspiring with the FBI and ignoring CIA-related assets like Carter Page in order to go after Donald Trump, create a media maelstrom to involve him in all sorts of what I would determine internal lawfare, right? And we saw the lawfare undertaken by the Democrat Party and activists in the Department of Justice and the local attorney general's offices in New York City and Georgia. But Kash Patel came to fame, for those of you who don't know, because he was one of the primary authors of the Nunes report. And Nunes, whatever. Representative Nunes, I can't remember how to say anybody's names because I don't watch broadcast cable television when it comes to news. So Devin Nunes had put out a report debunking Russiagate. Everything about it was horseshit. We know that now. It has been proven time and time again. And yet there are still Democratic people out there, or I should say people in the DNC, that do not believe the reality. They still are convinced that Donald Trump is a creature of Putin. My God, Time fucking magazine, used to be respected, now should be ignored, has a cover, 2024, December cover of Time magazine, has the White House now half covered in red, turning red with the Kremlin coming out of it. Why? I don't know. It's ridiculous. These people have nothing new to say or offer to the world other than this narrative that somehow Trump is a puppet of Putin. But we now know, largely in part to the work of Kash Patel, who had co-authored this report, as I mentioned, about Russiagate, where he went in, he found the discrepancies in the reporting. He found that the FBI had ignored Carter Page working for the CIA. We know that the FBI worked to basically obfuscate, is the best way to put it, what sources were, where they came from. Of course, Christopher Steele was the author of that whole Russiagate scandal report, which involved things as ridiculous, if you'll recall, as being on the bed. Donald Trump getting pissed on by prostitutes in a bed in Russia. And that's how they had this power over him, which is insane. So Kash Patel does all the research for this. He completely removes any shadow of a doubt that the FBI had colluded with the DNC, that the DNC had paid for this entire thing through Christopher Steele, and that the FBI went out of their way to, as they say, obfuscate which sources are what. Utilizing their own reports to say, okay, well, this guy, it's Christopher Steele's allegation. Well, this is corroborated by this other source as reported in the mainstream media in this Yahoo article, which, of course, the Yahoo article source, Christopher Steele. Kash Patel was attacked, derided, and assaulted, not physically, but professionally, by operators in the DNC, by senators like Adam Schiff and other notorious dirtbags in the party that somehow keep getting reelected, Chuck Schumer, etc. And let's not forget the lies told by Schiff and the Intelligence Committee saying that he had the receipts, that they knew Donald Trump was guilty of collusion with Russia, right? Of course, all of that a lie, complete lie. But these pieces of garbage are attacking Kash Patel and that report. They issue a supposed report that counteracts the report by Kash Patel, which had nothing in it that was new, nothing in it that actually had any substance to it. What did the mainstream media do? Well, they reported it as though it was debunked. Oh, Nick, ignore this Devin Nunes report that Kash Patel worked on. It was crazy. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Attacking him, attacking his background, attacking his work. So Kash Patel, if the media, if the DNC, if pieces of garbage like Chuck Schumer and Adam Schiff and others had not gone out of their way to try to destroy and undermine the work of Kash Patel, the question arises, would he be the director of the FBI today? I say no. I say we would never even have heard the name Kash Patel. I mean, you would have heard it in reference, but really the Nunes report would have been the truth, exonerating Donald Trump. And really, how many times can you think of in your life of a report that, you know all of the authors for? I mean, we know the name Robert Mueller, but Robert Mueller didn't write the report. He was heading up a special counsel that wrote a report. Do you know the names of the people in the special counsel? Of course you don't. You would only remember Nunes and that report. That's all you'd remember. You wouldn't remember Kash Patel, except the fact they went after him. And because of that, because they promoted this, because the name Kash Patel got promoted, because they were assaulting and attacking him so often, he came to prominence, having to defend himself, having to defend the work, having to defend what he did and the truth, going on all the podcasts, going on the shows, becoming a personality of note to the point where Donald Trump now recognizes the man, says this is the guy that did the work, this is the guy that was correct the whole time, and puts him in charge of the FBI. You have to appreciate the amazing irony of that. These people manifested, the FBI specifically, working to undermine him and clearly hide the truth while pushing a conspiracy against the sitting president of the United States at the time, and now future president of the United States, President-elect Donald Trump. They manifested their own demise. It kind of reminds me of Ghostbusters, does it not? When they summon Zool, and Zool goes, okay, well, you know what? Now you got to create this, you choose the manner of your destruction, right? Well, clearly somebody, Ray must have thought instead of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, Chris Ray, amazingly enough. Not even Ray from the Ghostbusters. But the amazing coincidence that Chris Ray, you still have a Ray incarnating his own destruction. Well, Chris Ray, when asked by Gozer the Destructor, sorry, I said Zool earlier. There is no Dana, there's only Zool. When Gozer the Destructor asked Chris Ray to choose the method of his own destruction, he should have thought of the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Instead, he must have thought of Kash Patel. And I have full faith in Kash Patel to come in there and wreck shit. Now, we'll see what's going to come out about Kash Patel, because as we know, as said by Adam Schiff himself, or maybe it was Chuck Schumer, I think it was Adam Schiff, the intelligence community has a million ways to get back at you. The only honest thing he's ever said. So we know they're going to come after Tulsi Gabbard. We know they're going to come after Kash Patel. We know they're going to dig up as many skeletons as possible, or create skeletons if there are none. All of that being said, I think it's a beautiful world ahead of us. I think the FBI is going to be completely dismantled from top to bottom as far as the people in power, as far as the structures there, as far as the incentives. And frankly, I'd be happy if it was never rebuilt. But we all know that's a pipe dream. At best, we can hope that it's going to actually follow the targeted specifics of what it was created to do, undertake federal investigations to protect American people rather than creating them, creating myths, creating terrorists, and then debunking their own terrorists that they created. It's a very circular way. Again, you're incarnating your own enemies. This time they happen to incarnate an enemy that is going to bring them down. So I love it. I'm excited by the Kash Patel pick. I think it's fantastic. I know there was some hemming and hawing about whether or not it was going to be Kash or another guy. Kash, and I can't remember what the other candidate's name was, but he was far shittier. So having somebody in there like Kash, Crazy Eyes Kash, I'll give Mark Claire credit for that because he does have crazy eyes, kind of like the rapper from the old Curb Your Enthusiasm, Crazy Eyes. Crazy Eyes Kash is going to come in there, and I really think do beautiful things, especially with Tulsi Gabbard at his back, the wind beneath his wings, and the air in his sails. So that's my thought about Kash and how the irony is thick there. Next, I want to move on and talk a bit about what's going on with Kamala Harris. There's been an incredible amount of, I don't even know. The only term is gaslighting. I hate to use the term gaslighting because it seems like it's overplayed, but there's been an incredible amount of gaslighting that's going on within the Democratic campaign apparatus, or apparati, however you want to say it. And they've been doing what essentially is a Cope and Gaslight tour. Now, this Cope and Gaslight tour has included going on multiple news outlets, and different people are taking part in this. And I'm not, actually here, let me look up the names of Kamala Harris's campaign leaders. Kamala Harris campaign manager. Because this is the person doing, Julie Chavez Rodriguez and Jen O'Malley Dillon. That's the two that have been doing the most damage. So even the Washington Post, look at this, 57 minutes ago. Oh, and Reuters, 31 minutes ago. Now, Washington Post and Reuters are obviously very, very left-leaning publications. But this is astounding when you have even Reuters, who, by the way, Reuters just did an internal assessment on Reuters, and they found that they were absolutely unbiased. They were, in fact, the most unbiased of all the major news wires, which is hilarious because I personally have done shows specifically talking about how ridiculously biased, left-wing, and horseshitty Reuters is and how their headlines are. They are a pure joke. But still, look at this headline right here. Democratic officials blame Harris election loss on outside factors. Oh, even the DNC committee chair, Jamie Harrison, has thought to downplay the extent of the defeat. Let's just read this. This is me live reading. I haven't even read this article yet. Although Democrats did not achieve what we set out to do, Trump wasn't able to capture the support of more than 50% of the electorate. Oh, so this is what because it looked like he was going to get the popular vote, but then as California's millions upon millions of brainwashed idiots got their votes in, now the popular vote's gone the other way. And let me just say straight out, I don't trust this in any way. I don't trust the counting process in any way, especially if you're considering votes coming in California. A lot of those votes that might be slower, maybe from rural areas. Some of them may be city centers where you're not having the most talented people count them, like the poorer communities. And let's not dissuade ourselves from the truth of the matter that there's every possibility that people that are counting ballots, which oftentimes, by the way, are probably going to have signatures that aren't cleared or issues with them. So it's subjective whether or not you keep them or throw them away. A lot of those ballots probably are going to get tossed if they happen to say Trump. But regardless, they stopped Trump from having a mandate. That's the cope that the Democratic National Committee chair is saying. But at the same time, I will say there's been these interviews that the chair people have done for the campaign, the chair managers I just mentioned. One was on this stupid ass left-wing podcast called Pod Save America. And the chairs were on there. I think both of them were on there doing an interview that I'd listened to. And they're blaming everything under the sun for the loss except themselves, right? The funniest part, though, was that they are blaming the media, for the perception that Kamala Harris didn't do any interviews, which, let's recall, she did not. For the entire first month of the campaign, she did no interviews. Now, this was actually a smart strategy, in my opinion, because once she started doing interviews, she started bottoming out. And let's not forget, at the exact same time she was not doing any interviews for a month, her rating, her approval rating, which was pure garbage, right? Because she was a do-nothing vice president. Anytime she appeared talking about, the moon, she sounded like an imbecile. Talking about cloud computing sounded like an imbecile. When she talked about the border, she sounded like a lying imbecile because she still hadn't been there, despite that, yes, she was named to be the border czar by Joe Biden. And if she wasn't officially a czar, whatever you want to say, well, she was still tasked with handling it, which I think was honestly a subversive move by Joe Biden, intent on submarining Kamala Harris, because I think he hates her. I think he continues to hate her to this day. So Kamala doesn't do any interviews. The media does fawning coverage, piece after piece, about how amazing she is. Oh my God, we're going to turn the page. This is a new woman for new change. She's going to unite America, right? The media does all these horseshit puff pieces on Kamala Harris. What happens to her approval rating? It skyrockets. It's 40 points more than it ever was. She's now more popular than Trump. And all the polls that are coming out, she's beating Donald Trump in every way. As Trump had been beating Joe Biden handily, now Kamala suddenly beating Trump by 10% in every major poll. Now, we know polls are crap right now. This has been the second time, or actually the third time we've seen that polls are completely unreliable in the Trump era. But regardless, the media bends over backwards to try to prop up this turd. And everybody knows you can't hold a turd up with toothpicks. You find that out the hard way doing Odyssey of the Mind as a child. Very few people will understand that joke, but for those that do, you're welcome. So her campaign managers, despite the fact that she's been propped up by the media, despite the fact that there's zero question what the media's intent was during the entire first month of her campaign when she didn't do any interviews, they then in turn blamed the media, saying that when she did do interviews, and that, by the way, she always did tons of interviews, guys, because you remember all those interviews she did, which all happened, to my recollection, within the last 3 weeks before the election took place, and were on the most media-friendly possible shows. Shows like The View, where she crapped out. Shows like ABC News that didn't do any pushback. NBC or MSNBC several times. CNN several times. Places where they clearly gave her the questions in advance. Let's not forget the town hall that was hosted. I can't remember if it was CNN or MSNBC. They hosted a town hall. Maybe it was NPR. I don't even remember. They hosted a town hall. And at the very beginning, one of the people in the audience said, "Are we going to be allowed to ask questions?" And was flatly told by Maria Shriver, who was hosting the event, "No, you're not allowed to ask questions at this town hall," in giant air quotes. It's a town hall you're not allowed to ask questions at. Why? Because they had pre-screened questions to ask Kamala Harris. Now, if you don't think those questions were known by the Harris campaign in advance, you're a fucking moron. Despite all of this unbelievably kid glove handling, and let's not forget that CBS, the one interview that really started a waterfall of the media trying to ask better questions because they were getting so much flack when she finally did interviews for being complete pushovers. The CBS interview that was done, and I'm forgetting the name of an older black reporter, he had actually pushed back a little bit. Let's not forget that CBS News went out of their way to recut the interview for when it aired on 60 Minutes. They recut the interview to put a question and an answer in there that never happened. They cut an answer into different segments because her initial answer that aired in this live segment was terrible. It was an answer on Israel. It was so bad, the media ran cover for her and edited in a different answer to the question. Yet the campaign for Harris went out there on Pod Saves America and says, well, the media, they were just asking questions that were terrible. They weren't focusing on the big picture. They were focusing on policy or whatever. Well, yeah, shouldn't they focus on policy instead of the big picture? I'm sorry, morons. And also, they didn't focus on policy, hardly any of them, only at the very end. And also because Kamala Harris had no policy that was out there. I mean, despite the fact that she had to have known she would be in this position, had no policy positions. Why? Because she had to rewrite all of her honest beliefs. Everything she said in the previous campaign, she now had to go back on and rewrite and make it sound like she wasn't a psychopath. And every policy position that she volunteered, moronic statements like you're going to get $25,000 for every single new home buyer, got immediately attacked, even by left-wing media, because they were fucking retarded. So, of course, the media is eventually going to ask you about policy. And how did Kamala Harris answer every question about policy, guys? That's right. By going back to her tried and true statements about growing up in a middle-class family. How did she answer it? Oh, by talking about an opportunity economy and giving zero policy factors in that. Oh, by talking about turning the page, talking about how she's a client of change, talking about how Trump's a threat to democracy. Her answers were exactly what you wanted. I'm sorry the media didn't capitulate enough after rolling over backwards and propping up your terrible, terrible candidate. Yes, thank you, B, who's watching. Yeah, she's running on joy. That's exactly right. That's what the media reported, right? For that time when she surged, it was joy. Her insane cackling was because she was so joyful. And now these women are trying to gaslight you into thinking that this is the media's fault, that she did all these interviews, and that's why they lost. I mean, the level of delusion that must be there is staggering if that's what it is. I'm convinced it's not. I'm convinced these people are just idiots as far as the tactics they employed. And maybe they know, maybe they're not even idiots. Maybe they just know because really any logical person knows that Kamala Harris is awful on camera. She's awful extemporaneously. And that there's no fucking way she would be able to handle media interviews like a Joe Rogan or any long format interview. So yes, the longer you can keep her out of the spotlight, the longer you can keep her off people's radio interviews, off people's airwaves, off podcasts, except for the Call Her Daddy podcast, which somehow they thought was a good idea. It's going to move the needle. The longer you can keep her off that, the better. And pretending that this is the media's fault, tell me how that's going to help. Number one, I'm sure all the media that gave you this very fawning coverage is never going to want to work with you again, idiot campaign managers. They are going to think you are poisoned, and they're right, because you're now throwing them under the bus after they treated you with kid gloves and kissed your fucking ass for a month and a half. But also, there's no way that people are believing it. Even people within the Democratic apparatus, people that are blind progressives, don't believe this line of garbage from these two people. Why would you even do the interview? I mean, that shows you how bad their campaign strategy is. They can't even run a campaign for themselves after the fact. You think the best strategy for this is you going out there, showing your faces, reminding everybody who failed in the campaign to protect democracy? The first black female candidate. Oh my God, she could have set history. You turds couldn't get her in there against Donald Trump, one of the most hated men in America. You should go into a hole. You should let people forget. If there's a man running around with memento disease, you need to scrub the fucking marker off of his arm so your names are forgotten and maybe you can work again in 4 years' time. You shouldn't be out there shooting your mouths off with lies and delusions and pure bullshit that all the world can see and react to and write massive articles about in the Washington Post and Reuters and everywhere else. These women are morons. But then again, why would you expect Kamala Harris to pick anybody that was in any way, shape, or form adequate? Just look to Tim Walz, special needs kid, riding the short bus to every single campaign event. Wow. Just wow. Okay. Speaking of just wow, not that anybody's surprised by this, but of course, Hunter Biden has been pardoned. Noted liar and charlatan Joe Biden has, of course, gone back on the multitude of promises he made and assurances given by Karine Jean-Pierre that he would not be pardoning Hunter Biden. Of course, we know that Joe Biden had tweeted out and said many, many times, no one is above the law. Well, apparently some people are, and it happens to be Hunter Biden. Now, John Odermatt did a long show about Hunter, so I'm just going to do a quick take on this, which is basically that I would do the same thing if it was my kid. I think it was very obvious this was always going to happen. The Democrat media and pundits that somehow built Joe Biden up as though he was a man of complete dignity and moral fortitude. Morons. Nothing about his career has shown that. Joe Biden is a chameleon and a liar. He lied. Joe Biden, I mean, for fuck's sake, Joe Biden lies about his own education, his military record, his athletic record. I mean, you can name on one hand how many things Joe Biden lies about just in a 4-minute conversation that have been well documented and debunked publicly. And yet we're supposed to believe him on Hunter Biden? Get the fuck out of here. There was no chance he wasn't going to pardon Hunter. The thing that's fascinating, though, is when the pardon starts, which is back in 2014. Coincidentally, when Hunter Biden was all involved and getting paid for work for Burisma, how'd he get the job? And getting kickbacks to old Joe. Oh, wow, interesting. And not paying his taxes. Oh, interesting. It's not just about the guns. And by the way, fuck guns. Not fuck guns. Fuck gun control. Fuck gun regulations. Fuck the reason that he got arrested for that. Also, fuck drug laws. And also, fuck the IRS. So I'm on Team Hunter for all these things. But let's not pretend the hypocrisy here is deep, considering what they did going after Donald Trump. And Joe Biden, his whole thing, his whole excuse for pardoning Hunter was that, oh, he was unfairly targeted. What? What are you talking about, Joe? I mean, this is where, again, like this, the gaslighting. Nobody, not even a Democrat, is going to believe that Hunter Biden was unfairly targeted. And by the way, a report was just released from the offices of the inspectors that went into this and his arresting, just looking into whether or not he was unfairly targeted. And their report frankly said, no, he wasn't. Flat out. Nope, he was not. And especially not compared to people of other races, of other creeds, of other economic status, or just everyday Americans that aren't currently the president. Like I said, Donald Trump, who have been unfairly targeted, who don't get a fair shake. I'd say anybody is unfairly targeted with a tax crime, drug crime, or gun crime for the most part, unless you're doing violent actions against someone else, of course. Don't violate the non-aggression principle, guys. But to say that this is a unfair targeting is really rich. And I think people would have just appreciated it if he said, look, it's my son. I'm going to be president for another month. I'm going to pardon him. People would get upset about it, but you know what? They're going to get upset about it either way. You either like Joe Biden or you don't. And honesty in that way would have gone a lot farther than making up some horseshit excuse to let your kid out, your dirtbag garbage kid. Now, what's funny about this, though, is that Hunter Biden is getting all sorts of pushback from the very woke left, how his pardon is a systematic abuse of white privilege. And that I appreciate. That I appreciate. It's funny. And I said, yeah, there is some truth to that. You got to admit, there's some truth to that. If he wasn't a white son of a white senator and became a white president, he probably wouldn't be pardoned. But at the same time, let's not forget the white privilege that led to all this. And that, of course, is the privilege to do a lot of white straight up your nose on the old cocaine. Because, hey, would Hunter have left his laptop at a laptop repair store for 4 years if he wasn't high on coke and crack? Probably not. Would he have gone on a rampage banging his brother's sister while high on crack cocaine, where that leads to her throwing a gun into a dumpster that we find out isn't registered? Probably not. Would he have abused his privilege or needed a job at Burisma if not for being a guy who burns through crack cocaine and hookers and spends a shit ton of money that he doesn't earn? Probably not. So look, he's got white privilege that went straight up his nose that led to all these problems. So these people, they got a point. They got a point. All right, last thing, guys, and I'm gonna wrap this up for today. Theme of the holidays is shorter shows because I have a lot going on. Decorating, buying presents, wrapping presents, figuring out what the hell and how I'm gonna make money next year. So, anyway, Ukraine. We're sending them $727 million more dollars. We just sent them something like another $400 or $500 million 2 weeks ago. I think we sent them several billion dollars the week before that. I just have to say, I voiced this before, my conspiracy theory on what's going on with Ukraine. I do believe that because Putin, by the way, has expressed that once, Donald Trump comes in, and I've read this from several sources, he is very optimistic about an end to the war. Even Zelensky, of course, is now trying to sue for peace because he knows that the money is getting shut off. The big daddy government in the United States and the taxpayers that are getting bent over a barrel supporting this garbage war that we have nothing to do with, well, that's going to all end once Trump's in there. So what's happened? Well, they approved the missiles being launched from from U.S. providers, from French providers, and from UK providers that can reach into Russia. Russia then, of course, drops this unbelievable hypersonic kinetic missile, which is, kinetic is basically just dropping something heavy from outer space because it's an ICBM they used in Ukraine to showcase this devastating weapon. Now, these weapons are, I would argue, the future because you're not using nuclear materials, but you are dropping something that has the effect or can have the effect of a nuclear bomb depending on the weight. I remember reading an article a long time ago about how getting tungsten up into the atmosphere and dropping it from above, let's say from a satellite or something in the upper atmosphere, that would have the same effect as a nuclear bomb because it's so dense and so heavy and the impact is so severe, it would explode, but without all of the nuclear fallout. Well, Russia just highlighted that they have that capability. Maybe not with tungsten rods, but with something similar where they launched an attack in Ukraine and with the kinetic missile dropped in several feet, not even feet, several, floors deep in the earth so it can bunker bomb, it can get rid of your labs and whatever else is underground with ease. That's terrifying. They've got the weapons. Do we? I don't know. I don't think so, but it certainly was a show of force. Now, at the same time, I believe that the U.S. said, go ahead, launch these missiles because they know that Putin is not going to retaliate against the U.S. or against NATO targets, knowing that Trump is going to come in and sue for peace. So the U.S. is using that to really stick it up his fucking ass as much as possible before Biden's out. At the same time, because just like parents that are getting divorced, right? When a couple gets divorced and they have a joint bank account, one of the people decides, I'm going to empty this shit out before daddy comes in, before papa comes in and turns it off and separates this money out. I'm going to go on a spending spree. Well, Joe fucking Biden and the administration and the cunts of Congress, well, they are sending money to Ukraine at an unbelievable clip. Just like in a divorce, they're emptying the account, knowing that it's coming to an end. So why not get while the getting's good? And that is what is happening. So it sucks. Expect payments every single week until Trump comes into office. I can basically guarantee, I'd bet my fucking house on it. That's what you're going to see. All right. Speaking of payments, sign up for our Patreon. Give us some money. I need money. Desperately. I need money. Patreon.com/Lions of Liberty or lionsofliberty.locals.com. Get all our bonus content. You get our degenerate gamblers. You get our good morning fuckhead rants. You get secret lies and cover-ups and much more. So again, support us, guys. If nothing else, please hit the like button, hit notify on YouTube because we are shadow banned to hell. Hit notify. Okay, thank you. You can follow us on Rumble, of course, Twitter, all that good stuff. X. Not on Blue Sky, though. I'm not going over there. Never. All right, guys, that's it. Also, listen to the first episode podcast. We're recording live this Thursday. From me, Brian McWilliams, from the Lions of Liberty Network and from Mean Age Daydream. Keep those electric eyes on me, babe. And keep that ray gun to my head.